And my first guest is a special one. Ehud Olmert is former Israeli Prime Minister, someone who was in charge when Israel led an invasion of Lebanon in 2006. I appreciate you joining us, Mr. Olmert. We are exactly 1 year on from that horrific terror attack of Hamas in Israel. 1 year later, what do we find? An escalating conflict that has claimed thousands of lives. Put in your words how you see the last 1 year. Has it now reached a point of no return, this conflict in West Asia?
No, I think that this has been a terrible year, no doubt, primarily for Israel and for thousands of Israelis that were butchered and raped and killed in the most terrible manner, and subsequently for many other parts of the country, and then of course also to many thousands of Palestinians living in Gaza, in the areas where Hamas is in control, and Hamas in purpose used the civilians in Gaza as a human shield in order to protect themselves from the Israeli counteroffensive. This has been a very difficult, a very painful, a very bloody year. I think it's time to end it. And my first expectation is that Israel will decide to stop the war in Gaza. We have broken down the Hamas military power. We destroyed most of the tunnels underground Gaza and killed most of its fighters. And there is so much that you can achieve in a military operation. At this point now, as you have mentioned, there are 101 Israelis who are still held by Hamas as hostages. And if we need to stop the war in order to bring them back, then we have to do it.
Now, you're calling, Mr. Olmert, for a cessation of hostilities on the very day when Israel has pounded Beirut, when Hezbollah has targeted Haifa, and when there is fear that there could be an escalating conflict involving Israel and Iran. Are you saying that it is even now possible to de-escalate, given that all indications, including what your Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu seems to suggest, is that this is a fight to the finish?
You can only call for de-escalation when it's escalated. And indeed, as you have mentioned, there are hundreds of rockets shot at Israeli civilian centers from across the border in Lebanon, which requires an Israeli response by the Israeli Air Force in the headquarters of Hezbollah in the Dahya section of Lebanon. But this is precisely the time where we have to hold on, all of us, and to de-escalate what appears to be escalating. Just a few days ago, as you probably recall, the Iranians shot 200 ballistic missiles to Israel. There has never been in the history of modern times anywhere in the world such an attack of 200 ballistic missiles at the same time, moving forward with 2,000 kilometers per hour or more, right through to the state of Israel. Thank God we were skillful enough and capable enough of intercepting them, together with our American friends and European friends. But this is not something that can be tolerated. So yes, I think that we have to stop the war in Gaza. We have to stop, hopefully, to reach an agreement about Lebanon that will allow us to bring back the 80,000 Israelis which were vacated out of their homes for for a whole year now, and bring them back if the hostilities will end in the north. But most important, of course, Iran has to be stopped.
No, how? Let's turn to that. You're saying ceasefire in Gaza, which presumably means with the return of hostages. That's presumably your expectation. Am I correct? You expect the hostages to be returned, in return for which there will be a stop to hostilities in Gaza.
all of the hostages in one phase, and
Right.
Israel has to stop the war and eventually, of course, pull out entirely from Gaza in the event that security forces will step in instead of Israel. That will prevent any further attacks coming from Gaza
Okay.
towards it.
So you're saying almost simultaneously return of hostages that were taken 1 year ago and a cessation of hostilities in Gaza. But you said Iran's actions cannot be tolerated. I read somewhere you suggesting that perhaps Iran's power installations need to be targeted. There are others who are talking about oil and military installations being targeted. How do you think Israel should and is likely to respond to Iran?
Well, Israel has enormous capacity, as you know, and you have witnessed it over the last month and weeks in every direction. By the way, just an hour ago, there was a ballistic missile shot at from Yemen by the Houthis into the state of Israel, trying to target the international airport at Ben Gurion, and it was intercepted also. And this is all Iran. Iran is in Yemen, Iran is in Syria, Iran is in Iraq, and Iran is in Lebanon. So the question is, what is the priority of Iran? I didn't suggest that we can attack the nuclear capacity, the nuclear program of Iran. We can attack the oil headquarters of Iran, every part of Iran. I don't suggest this. I suggest that Israel will retaliate precisely the same way that the Iranians attacked us into military installations around Iran. But the question is, what is Iran after? Iran must know one thing. If they will continue the shooting at Israel, they will not face Israel only. They will face the United States of America and possibly also European countries that will fight with Israel to defend the Western countries against this Islamic fundamentalist, extremist, uncontrollable, bloodthirsty attitude.
But many, Mr. Olmert, believe that this is exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu also wants. He wants a war with Iran because that will bring the United States in and that will actually widen the conflict. You're talking about de-escalation. Effectively, the moment Israel strikes on Iran, you're escalating the conflict and probably bringing the United States into it.
You have to be slightly, if you can, if you don't mind, to be slightly more accurate. First of all, as you know, I don't speak for Netanyahu and I don't speak for the Israeli government.
Sure.
I'm in opposition to Netanyahu and I'm in opposition to the Israeli government. I believe most of the Israelis. But one can't ignore the fact that Iran started shooting ballistic missiles to Israel, first in April of this year, and now just less than a week ago, in a way that has to be answered somehow. And what I suggest is that the Israeli answer will be such that will not trigger an expansion of these hostilities. So the Iranians will have to understand that whatever they do, the fact is that they shot 200 ballistic missiles and there was not one Israeli hurt, personally, physically, okay? So they have to decide whether they want to continue this game, which may cost them a great deal more than it costed us up until now, particularly because they are going to face, as I said before, the United States and other countries together with Israel. So my desire is that this will end. It will allow us to end the war in Gaza. It will allow us to end the conflict in the north. Hopefully, if Hezbollah will understand that it has been very painful to them in the last few weeks, and it can be even more painful, and it can be more disastrous to Lebanon, and we are not interested in it.
How do you respond?
Lebanon.
How do you respond, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Olmert, to those who say that what Israel is doing, that's how the Palestinians and many the Arab street views it, is genocide? You're targeting civilians. You want to finish the Hezbollah. You want to finish Hamas. In the process, innocent civilians have died. thousands of them, disproportionate to what happened on October 7th. How do you respond to the charge that Israel is engaging in what the Palestinians are saying is genocide and the killing of innocents?
I'm sure that you don't say it, because a sober person would never voice this kind of outrageous accusations which have no basis in reality. Fact is that Hamas started this operation, and there was no way that we could not respond to this. Hezbollah started the operation on the 8th of October last year without any provocation, without any reason. They said, Nasrallah said, before he was targeted, he said, the reason that we are fighting is because we want to fight against Israel because of the South, without any particular reason that they had to justify this kind of conflict between us and them. We are not interested in committing any crimes, and the fact is that although there were claims to the International Court of Justice arguing that Israel committed war crimes, it was not validated by the International Court of Justice. On the contrary, he didn't accuse any Israeli action as trying to create war crime, and there is not any basis for these accusations. Yes,
but yet, Mr. Olmert, there are Palestinians who say that this war didn't begin on October 7, 2023. It's been building up for years. They claim that they see Israel having occupied Gaza and West Bank, that they've treated Palestinians as effectively second class, that there are thousands of Palestinians in Israeli jails. There seems to be so much of animus on both sides. So when you talk of ending the conflict, how do you end the bitterness that exists? How is that going to ever end?
Well, first of all, I subscribe to the statement opening your broadcast when you said exactly 1 year ago, on the 7th of October 2023, the war started by the attack of the Hamas against the state of Israel, butchering and killing more than 1,000 Israelis in the living rooms and in the bedrooms. So this is how it started. Now there is a long historical conflict between us and the Palestinians. The fact is that Israel pulled out from Gaza in 2005, and I had the privilege of being one of the main pushers as the vice prime minister at that time of doing it. Now, I'm sure that you are aware of the fact that in 2008, I presented the Palestinians with a comprehensive peace plan based on a two-state solution that unfortunately the president of the Palestinian Authority at that time didn't sign it, and he may have missed an opportunity, an historic opportunity, to have changed entirely the Middle East. Mm-hmm. Recently, as a few weeks ago, I issued a joint statement signed together with the former foreign minister of the Palestinian Authority and the former ambassador of the Palestinians to the United Nations, and the nephew of Yasser Arafat, a joint statement calling for the end of the war in Gaza, and offering a framework for peace between us and the Palestinians on a two-state solution. So what I am doing, and what some Palestinians are prepared to do with me, which is remarkable and impressive.
But are the people, what you're doing, that's the question. Do the people of Israel and Palestine now, are they willing to have peace, given, as I said, what's happened in the last 1 year, the anger on both sides? Is there a peace dividend out there? Are they ready for peace?
There is anger, obviously. How could it not be? Considering what happened, considering how on the 7th of October 2023, we were waking up to watch the massacre of thousands of Israelis in the bedrooms by savage Palestinians coming from across the border. But the ultimate responsibility of leadership is to try and change things, and not to surrender to emotions of hate and to the desire to avenge when perhaps a different direction can be adopted. And what we are trying to do is to say to the Israelis, and hopefully to the Palestinians, but of course this is something that a Palestinian leader such as Nasser al-Kidwa will be able to do, is to say, look, at the end of the day, there is no other solution than a political compromise that will allow the establishment of a Palestinian state alongside the state of Israel that will provide the Palestinians with an opportunity to entertain their rights for self-determination as they have never done before.
Okay.
I support, this is what I'm working for, this is what I'm preaching for, this is what I'm saying up front across the world, and I hope, together with a colleague from the Palestinian side, and we hope that this will ultimately capture the attention of the international community to help move it forward.
Well, that is the long-term objective, surely a political solution. But in the short term, we're seeing now Israeli forces on the ground in Lebanon. Last time when you were Prime Minister, Israeli forces were there in Lebanon in 2006 and the operation was not entirely successful. My point is, you're talking of the long-term political solution, which is surely the way forward. But in the short term, do you only see now further escalation, further bombings, more violence, more killings? Is that inevitable? Israel seems to have opened, or their adversaries have opened a multi-front war. Is that something that troubles you if Israeli forces are on the ground in Lebanon, if they strike at Iran, if the Houthis also get involved from Yemen, if Syria also gets involved? Is that your worry that in the short term, we could have an escalating conflict that consumes the entire Middle East?
You have to decide where the multi-front war starts and how it can be stopped. You are claiming that Israeli forces are in Lebanon. Israeli forces were holding up for more than a year when the Lebanese were shooting at us, the Hezbollah, and forced out 80,000 of the Israelis living in the north away from their homes, and were shooting on day in, day out, every day, 200, 300 rockets into every part of the north section of Israel, forcing more than 1 million people to live in the shelters because of the danger to their lives. So at some point, something had to be done. And what happened in the last few days is a result of this endless, continuous, atrocious attacks by Hezbollah. And the same goes for the Houthis, and the same goes for the Iranian militias in Syria. We didn't know that the Houthis exist until they started to shoot ballistic missiles at us. What we want to do now is very simple. Israel, my Israel, okay? I don't speak for the government. I don't speak for the Prime Minister. They don't like me. And I'll tell you something, I don't like them, okay? What I suggest is that we will stop immediately the war in Gaza in order to bring back all the hostages simultaneously in one phase. I suggest that the American and the French efforts to broker a deal between us and the government of Lebanon will bring an end to the war in Lebanon, and that will probably quieten down the Iranians, at least for the time being. If the Iranians will insist on continuing the hostilities in spite of what I suggest as an ending of the war in the south and ending the war in the north, then they will have to fight not just with Israel, but also with America. And I'm not sure that this is going to be very, very helpful to the Iranians.
Well, Mr. Ehud Olmert, for speaking your mind out and your voice in a manner that perhaps hopefully will echo across the Middle East, that this is a moment for peace.
Also in India. We want very much Prime Minister Modi. I want very much Prime Minister Modi. Modi is a great leader and a very important international leader. And we expect him and we want him to support what I propose and Mr. El-Kidwa proposed, that is an end to the war, embarking on negotiations, a two-state solution with a very, very intense support of India. India is an enormously important, highly regarded country here, and the leadership of India is friendly to us as well as to the Palestinians, so they can play an important role in this process.
Ehud Olmert, for joining me there from Tel Aviv. Appreciate your joining us. Stay safe. Thanks very much for joining me here and speaking your mind out.